Hi, I'm Mike, and today I'm going to talk about how we're going to build our Dragonfly model. This is a two-session model. We're going to build it in one session and fly it during the second session. The first two pieces that your students are going to need is the elevator and the fuselage. We're going to begin by sanding the elevator and the fuselage. As always, we're going to have our cutting board at the edge of the table flush. We're going to use our sandpaper, sanding side to side only, taking off all of the excess balsa wood that is outside the lines that we have, the thin blue lines designating the edge of our elevator and our fuselage. With this particular model, the fuselage in particular is very thick. So what you may find is that some of your students are going to have trouble sanding this particular part right here because it's curved and it's also quite thick. Feel free to use your hobby knife to help them with that. We're going to score the balsa wood lightly, tracing the lines to get some of the excess material off. And in a pinch, this plane will pretty much fly out of the box even if you don't do too much sanding on it. But we do want to give the students a chance to work on this. Once we're done getting the excess off of these, we're going to attach our motor assembly and our wing mount before we attach the elevator to the fuselage. So I've pretty much got these trimmed up now. We're going to go ahead with our building. Have your students take the motor assembly carefully out of the package. The motor assembly consists of the capacitor, which stores the electrical energy, the motor, and these wires. We want to be careful not to break these wires during our assembly process. And you'll notice we have a little rubber band that's attached around the switch. We're going to take that rubber band off so it doesn't get in our way. We're going to set the rest of our pieces aside for later. Our motor assembly, we're going to take and put the capacitor into the square block of our fuselage right here, and the motor then is going to line up inside this cutout, and we want to make sure that the motor can sit in there nice and straight. As an instructor, we're going to take our super glue and we're going to use super glue on the circuit board here to attach this part to the fuselage using a little spray. The spray is not going to hurt the electronics on the motor or the capacitor, so don't worry about that. It'll dry before we end up using it. Now, very importantly, when we're securing the motor in place, you want to make sure that the motor is straight in line with the rest of the aircraft. So we don't want our motor twisted off to the right or to the left. We're going to use the super glue to set this in place, making sure it stays nice and straight, and we're going to reinforce that on the bottom as well. Making sure after we've done that we can still spin the armature of the motor a little bit so that it works properly. If you want to, you can even test this. Make sure the motor is working correctly at this stage. The next step, we're going to take out of this plastic bag here the mounting plate for our wing. Now, this mounting plate serves two purposes. It also serves to fly the wing without the motorized assembly that we have. So what we're going to do to start this is remove the plastic adjustment piece on the bottom here. And the easiest way to do this is just to spin one of these wheels out to the edge until it presses it out a little bit. And then we're going to be able to pop this piece right out of the carrier and remove that whole assembly, so that what we're left with is this portion of the tower, which is what we're going to attach to our fuselage now. In our fuselage, we have these two cutouts right here and here that our tower will slip into, just like that. And what you want to do is get the back section of this bottomed out in the hole and the front section in the slot but not bottomed out, and this way we're going to maintain a little angle of attack on our fuselage for the wing to sit on. We're now going to make sure, looking at the front, that this is balanced with the fuselage so that this is as horizontal as possible with the fuselage vertical. And we're going to set that in place then using super glue on both sides with the spray to secure that in place. Just going to reinforce it here a little bit on the back side. Double checking that I have a nice balanced mount and that this is not crooked to the left or the right. Now that I've got all these parts in place, I'm ready to glue my elevator on. While we're gluing our elevators, students can be decorating their planes and coloring them while the instructor is gluing the elevators on. With the elevator has a straight side and a pointed side. This pointed side is going to be the leading edge of the elevator. So it's going to mount on the fuselage facing forward like this. And it's very important that we get this balanced to the left and right. So we don't want it tipped off like this or tipped off like this. Neither of these ways. To mount the elevator, I'm just going to take a little super glue, run it right along the top edge of my fuselage right here on the tail section. And I'm going to mount the elevator looking from the tail section, lining it up with the middle, and I'm going to hold it in place, making sure that I get a nice 90-degree angle, and then I'm going to use my spray to set it. Another way you can do this is to hold the model on the table like this with the elevator flat. And you have to hang the tip of the model off the edge so that you can keep the elevator flat. And I'm going to reinforce both sides of my elevator with super glue. And before I let that set, I'm going to double and triple check that that's nice and straight. Blow on it. And now our fuselage here is going to be finished. The next step, when your students are done decorating, is going to be to mount our foam wing to the tower here. Our foam wing, if we look at it, has a couple of slots in it, right here and right here. These two slots are going to mount over the two tabs that are on the top of my tower. And those will pretty much hold the wing in place for me while I put the securing strap on. Now my securing strap is just this little piece of plastic right here that has a tiny bit of a V to it. What we're going to do is make sure that the V is pointing down. We're going to hook the back edge over the rear edge of the tower, and then using our thumb we're going to pull it and snap it over the front edge just like that. That's going to help keep the dihedral on our wing and it's going to hold the wing in place for us. At this point, we've finished all the assembly of this aircraft with the exception of mounting the propeller. Before we mount our propeller, we're going to want to make a little test flight with this aircraft. Just giving it a little hand toss like all our other aircraft. You're going to hold it right under the main wing right here. You're going to push it nice and straight, test and see if it flies. If this plane stalls by tipping up and then diving down toward the ground, or if it dives, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little Scotch tape and we're going to use the Scotch tape to make an elevator adjustment on the tail flap of this wing. I'm going to give you an example of that, how to do that. I'm going to take about 2 or 3 inches of tape, and with a lot of excess, we're going to attach it to my elevator, and then I'm going to fold it back over itself like this, and then pinch it together like that to make an adjustable flap on the rear of the elevator. Oftentimes you'll get a little bit of a twist at the end of that paper that we don't like. For that, you can just use a scissor to trim that off, and that'll give you a nice straight surface. And we're going to bend this up if the plane is diving, and if the plane is stalling, we're going to bend this down a little bit like so to trim this aircraft out. If we need a little bit more control, we can add a second piece of tape on the other side, but the first piece of tape, as long as it's pretty close to the center here, will usually do the job to balance this plane out. Once we've done all of that, we're ready to attach our propeller to the nose We're going to attach our propeller right here by pushing it on. You don't want to seat it so tightly that the motor won't spin. Usually just a little bit of a push on there will get it in place, as long as this is spinning freely. Now what we can do is charge this aircraft with our chargers. To do that, we're going to have to place some batteries in the charger. You're going to have to make sure that you have batteries because the batteries don't come in your kit. So you're going to need to get those separately, make sure that you have those for your flight day. And you can just use a coin to pop open this charging pack right here. There's a little slot in the middle. You twist that, that'll pop your charger open. Teach your students, as always, the negative or flat side of the batteries will go against the springs on either side of this charger. Just like that. And then they can snap the cap back on. This cap only goes one way. There's a little notch that goes with the white piece. And snap this back together. Now our charger is complete. To charge this aircraft, we have a little mounting dock right here that the white tip of our charger is going to mount into. We're going to charge this plane for 30 seconds to a minute, counting 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. Very important safety tip on this aircraft. These can only be plugged in for a minute anytime. Plugging it in for too long can cause overheating, could lead to melting, possibly even a fire. So we want to make sure that when our students go home, they know never to leave this plugged in. They don't want to plug it in, walk away to let it charge for a little while, and then come back to it later. That's a safety hazard. We're going to count 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000, up to 30 1000 to get a good charge for a test flight once we've already trimmed it out. Once we're ready to fly this model, we're going to hold it right underneath the center part of the wing, flip the switch to on, and give it a quick push, nice and straight and level, and let the aircraft take off. And that's it for flying our Dragonfly. Thanks for building with us, and have a great flight day.